Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful June the 15th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C's actually dealing with some thunderstorms down south, and sometimes Mother Nature wants to hear the Big C Sports podcast, but sometimes weather gets in the way. We're still trying to work on it as we're doing our show, but in the meantime, I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Man, I've been pausing. Everybody's doing the pause. I really want to make sure we pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. I know a lot of people going through some challenges all over the world, it seems. But the Veterans Crisis Line, they're there to really help the veterans. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. They really are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And when you reach out to them, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Our goal is simple. We want to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, just like, if you think about it, everybody's doing TV when they get the chance. Car dealerships do it. McDonald's does it. A lot of people are starting to do it now as business is coming back into the fold, and we want to do that for real estate. Let TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624, and hopefully you can get your real estate out there working for you. Also, for those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, looking to recruit 100 real estate brokers. And the reason for that is growing business. As the economy, it will come back. We just don't know how soon. But if you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. And if someone would have told me a long time ago that what we had started with Big C Sports would have been, I guess, a format that a lot of people are using. It seems all over the world, and I know many people that have started. When I started broadcasting, it was actually back in, I want to say, 1998. It was Sports Talk USA, and I was a West Coast correspondent covering primarily sports from the NFL and also college football, basketball, and baseball, and track and field. I was covering primarily in the Pac-12 conference. I think the first Super Bowl that I reported on was when it was the Tennessee Titans with Steve Air McNair, and they played at that time the St. Louis Rams. And I remember that game, and it went right down to the wire, and that's when we were on Sports Talk USA. And then over the years, working with various other networks, and primarily the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and having a sports talk show and being around television from Fox Sports to NBC Sports, CBS Sports, going to several Super Bowls and just being a part of that. I've always loved this business. But a paradigm shift has happened. Just like the thunderstorms that knocked out some of the phone lines down south, And a sea change has been happening in the world of media. And I think from what I've seen, I've been in press box with the late Pat Summerall, John Madden with my first start, with Mike Roig and Fran Morrison, and that was with Fox Sports. It was the 49ers and San Diego Chargers preseason NFL football game. Now, why is that important? It's important because the platforms that we're doing now, they never did them back then, but they're doing them now. And when Big C and I started Big C Sports, we started, ironically, I want to say it was 2015, and we started on Salem Media, which I think it had about 115 stations or 140 stations nationwide. And our program went to number one in our time slot. And for the first time in 44 years, they'd been able to cover the whole budget for the whole year. Just, some words from the station editor. But I really feel that the reason we have Big C Sports, and only I know this and Big C knows it, and some of the partners that I worked with at the time, there were some things that were said about myself from a coworker. We'd just done the Super Bowl show. It was the Super Bowl 50 over in San Francisco, and it was the Denver Broncos, Peyton Manning's last game, and they defeated the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton. And at that time, everything was wonderful. There's a lot of people down at the NFL Network was there downtown San Francisco. We had shot about 20 different commercials, just grabbing people, asking them their thoughts on the game and who they thought would win. I remember at that game meeting people that were as far away as Canada. There were people, of course, that came from all over the United States of America, and everybody has their own opinion about what they want to talk about and who was going to win. And I'll never forget how much of a grin we had. And we always had Big C doing his call-ins. He would call in from the South and give his thoughts on various things. And so, ironically, what's happening today is the same thing that happened back then. I had a partner, and he said some very derogatory things, not to me, but to some other people. And it was about black Americans and how he used the N-word. I mean, think about it. In front of my face, he was brother this and brother that, and God bless you here and God bless you that. But there are some things that he was dumb enough to even put it, or maybe the way God works, he was dumb enough to put it on a cell phone, and he text some really bad things. But before that, we were going to go down to Monterey in Carmel to do it was the NFL Celebrity Golf Tournament. And I believe Jim Nance does the hosting of that tournament. And so we were going to drive down from San Francisco. It was the week after Super Bowl 50. And some things happened. And long story short, he said he went without me and did the filming. And I don't know if he did or not. But I thought, and we had made plans to go. But some things had happened. And there was a partner of mine that I guess she had either way, everybody has their own come to Jesus moment. But what happened that created us to do our own platform was some of the same enmity that's going on now around the country. And it's amazing how we got our start with some turbulence, kind of like the thunderstorm that's knocked Big C's phone line down today. The turbulence that happened, it actually happened in 2015. And he had so many negative things. He's a white guy. A lot of negative things. In fact, he had went to the University of Oklahoma and he played football at the University of Oklahoma, this other partner of mine, and he had some negative things to say about African Americans. He used the N-word, and it was the uppity N-word, that you uppity N-words, because he wasn't used to someone being able to elucidate a subject or enunciate words better than him, or whatever it was. It just created a lot of enmity. And there was a program director at the station, and I won't even give out his first name, but he said to me in front of that person, you guys don't really need them. You can do your own thing. And he was talking about Big C and I. And the gentleman walked out of the room. But the point of the matter is, you want to embrace people as much as you can. But the reason for the Big C Sports Show is there was a Caucasian guy that I considered a really good friend at the time, and a lot of people thought we were friends because I really did like the guy. I thought he was a good business partner. I thought we could have done a lot of great things together. We worked together for almost a year, and we had a great time covering sports. We would have NFL football players call into the platform. Some WNBA players called in. We had boxers that would call in that worked down at the Holyfield, that worked with Evander Holyfield. We had people calling from all over the country doing our show. And at the same time, some enmity had built up. We had done a commercial. It was at Team Alpha Male, Uriah Faber, one of the biggest gyms in the country, really, when it comes to MMA. And they were moving from a downtown facility, and he was moving to another facility in the Sacramento area, and over by Highway 50. But we had recorded some MMA fighters. Cody Garbrandt was there. I remember meeting, talking to him. He had just had the big belt. I almost dropped this belt on my foot, Big C. That belt's a lot heavier than I thought it would be, the UFC belts. Met a lot of fighters there. There's a gentleman by the name of Robertson. He was the California Muay Thai state champion. And just a lot of good fight. Josh Emmett, who's part of the UFC, met him. He actually had Josh Emmett on our program. So we went down to Golden One Center in Sacramento, California, because Uriah Faber was having a fight that was going to be covered on Fox Sports. And long story short, I didn't get a lot of the things that I wanted. The recordings, they kept them, and just some other issues came up. So we started to do our own thing. But before we started doing our own thing, just going back to what happened, I was called the N-word. He said a lot of negative things about my just black Americans, period. You wouldn't think this guy. I mean, how did he get a radio show and he has such enmity and bigotry? And that's the fact. That's how Big C Sports got started. So the platform we do when we talk is the way God puts things together. I believe in multiculturalism. I always have done that, and I always want to make sure that I do it that way. And so that's how a lot of things happen. I want to make sure we were having a little bit of technical difficulties. I actually got Big C calling in. He was actually able to get a phone line and call in, so I really appreciate that. And I was just sharing, Big C, how a lot of things that are going on in today's climate is how we got our show started. Some things we're saying about the N-word, and I was called a lot of things, and not just me, but a lot of negative things were said about black Americans. And so I just see how today's climate is you just got to go forward or you go backwards. But Big C, I know we have you on, and I apologize. I was trying to get the call lines to work, but I know we're having some weather issues, so I hope everything goes well. But would you believe that the sports and the politics working together will help form not only a more perfect union, but a perfect world, and if you think about it, even a perfect universe, because people are talking about everything that's important, whether it's from America to Canada, England, South America to Zimbabwe. People are speaking about ways to make the world better by listening and talking. And that's how we started out with Big C Sports. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as I look at sports is a detractor from the reality of life. And that's the reason why there's such a push to bring sports back, to take your mind off of all these things and be a deflector. Because if sports come back, would we be talking about the issues that are going on in America and around the world right now? COVID-19 brought everybody to the same dinner table.
Yeah.
But let everybody know that they were no better off than anyone else because this disease had no barrier. And now that COVID has shut down America and the world, Charlton, it allows for you to actually see all the things that are going on. Because if the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NHL were playing right now,
yeah,
would people be talking about all the injustices going on in America?
Yeah.
No, it would be deflected by sports.
Yeah.
But this is the big cry for people wanting to bring sports back, to take your mind off of what's going on. If we go back to the Montgomery bus.
So we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so I apologize too, but we're going to keep going forward. And I know a lot of things, as you talked about, Big C, are happening with everything that's going on. But the sports, if we didn't have sports, or if we did have sports, I think the platform will still be there, but there are a lot of people, they can't talk without the teleprompter. So from that idea, it would change. But at the same time, I think a lot of the media people are realized if you just have real dialogue, it's more gripping. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they're not interested in having real dialogue, Charlton. They want to have sports out there to take away from the reality of life. Because when you look at the majority of Americans, Charlton, they're not going to be affected by what we've seen on television for the past month going on in America. And so they're constantly crying for sports. We need sports. We need a filler. We need to take everybody's eyes and minds off of the reality of the world. That's the problem that we've had. We've been, bamboozled for so long thinking that sports was the only thing that was important in America and not the American way of life. I mean, the 14th Amendment subscribes to us having an equal opportunity. But when you think about the attention that's given to black people and it's only given to them when it comes to sports and not other aspects of life, that lets you know that people think of us in a one-dimensional thought.
Yeah, and that may be true. Everybody has their own right to think whatever they think. But at the same time, conversation is the only way you make things better, whether it's a husband and wife, a parent or a child. It all works together. I want to ask you something. I know you're down south, and I apologize for the quality of our podcast today, but we're still dealing with weather. I believe over the weekend there were some mayors that got together from 4 different cities, and every one of these cities have a sports teams. It was from Chicago, San Francisco, Atlanta, and then Washington, D.C., and they were talking about how do you navigate your roles as mayors along with some of the stereotypes that are imposed on African-American women. And I think whether it's from Harriet Tubman to First Lady Michelle Obama, African-American women have experienced everything, not just the sports world, and with oftentimes their children being very successful in sports, but even shaping politics from Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, to First Lady Michelle Obama. I'm glad we're having more African-American women, Big C, dealing with the dialogue and how to make things better, especially when it's not pertaining to sports, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the greatest part about these women, Charlton, is that they do not address sports because sports is not what makes their cities go.
Yeah.
It's not what controls the populace of their city. And when you look at these women, how intelligent and articulate that they are, and commanding the respect from the cities that they live in, Charlton, and being able to deal with the mayoralship of those cities, they're powerful individuals. But as we look at what's going wrong in society, as America for the past, 100 years has had sports always put out there to cover up for what people are doing. I mean, in Atlanta over the weekend, they had the shooting of an unarmed black man who fell asleep in a drive-through window.
Yeah.
And he lived 2 blocks from the restaurant, Charlton. And even when the police got him out of the car, because he was on private property, they realistically could not do anything. He had the rights because he was on private property. He was not on public property. He said, I will just walk home. They will not allow him to leave the situation. They wanted to escalate it. And that escalation of the situation, Charlton, caused this man's death. He got shot in the back while he was fleeing. He didn't pose a risk to the police, but even the policeman said that when he shot him, said, I got it. Because you could see he had malice and bad intent.
Yeah.
Because he could have let this man walk home, and he chose not to let him walk home. He lived 2 blocks away from where he lost his life.
Yeah.
But as we look at, you don't have any sports now to cover up for that, even on the sports shows, as we look at it. But as I look at these powerful black women that control 4 of these large cities in America, Charlton, they talk about bringing equality and justice.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody needs to take a step back and look at the 14th Amendment and what it stands for and see how it's not, used for people in color, Charlton. They don't get the same latitude as everybody else. And people want to say, well, you guys keep talking about this, and people want to say, well, it's black-on-black crime. Yes, there is black-on-black crime. There's white-on-white crime. There's Asian-on-Asian crime. There's Hispanic-on-Hispanic crime.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing those people get shot on television, Charlton, or are choked out on television in a regular basis. You think out there, even California, over the past couple of weeks, you've had 2 black men hung, one down in Palmdale, California, and I believe the other one was in Orange County, Charlton. They were hung from trees.
Yeah.
One in front of the library in Orange County, one in Palmdale along the street. They were hung, and there's no anti-lynching law in America. And so when you look at this racial divide that's going on in America, Charlton, some of these things you just can't say, well, you got to look at the crime that's going on within the race. That's not the issue. We want other people to stop killing within the race.
Yeah, that's true. There was had someone sent me an article. It was actually on a Facebook story, and it just happened to be a Caucasian man. I'm going to say he's probably in his 40s, and he had been pulled over by law enforcement, and they wrestled. They tumbled and started fighting when they tried to handcuff him. Well, he took the baton from the female officer and hit her over the head with it, and there was another officer, a Caucasian man, and the guy beat up the lady and took off running. They didn't pull their taser on him. In fact, he got in the patrol car, took the patrol car and took off. And there was another lady, I'm just assuming she could have been a girlfriend or a friend of the person who beat up the woman. These are white people. And she says, stop it, they're going to hurt you, they're going to hurt you. And they didn't pull out a taser, and they didn't shoot him, and he took off in the patrol car. It's all over Facebook. People were saying, had he been African-American, it probably would have gotten that far. But I want to ask your thoughts on something, too. And again, I apologize for the sound of our podcast today. We'll try to speak louder and try to clear it up. But Mother Nature talks, Big C. Sometimes you got to listen. NCAA football, it was Oklahoma State head coach Mike Van Gundy. I think he wore a T-shirt from the OAN network, and I think that's One American Network. It's a very right-wing media outlet, and they really don't believe in Black Lives Matter. And when you hear about Black Lives Matter, they say it's a farce. It's just people trying to make up things to be mad at cops. But ironically, it's amazing how here's a man who's made multiple millions of dollars by recruiting, for the most part, black athletes. He has a running back that's an All-American by the name of Chuba Hubbard, and he's from Canada, but he rushed for over 2,000 yards. And so he just got together with some of his teammates and said, I don't appreciate that. Would you believe the school president is actually backing the athlete, Big C? Not the guys that work for free, not the guy they're paying millions of dollars to, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think all over the place, from Dabo Swinney to Van Gundy there at Oklahoma State, too much emphasis is being put on these coaches. These coaches have been quiet for a long time.
Yeah.
And without the sports going on, Charlton, now people are starting to focus on them to see how they actually think, other than being a slave driver on their plantation is called a football team.
Yeah.
And everybody is calling on these guys, okay, now you got to speak out and be a social activist. That's not what their role is. That's not what they were hired by the universities as, to be social activists. I mean, you look at Ohio State University, the most profitable university in the United States. Ask their players today to sign whole harmless agreements and their parents that if they get sick from this COVID while they're at the university, that they cannot hold the university liable for it, Charles.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, nobody has gone out, and even the parents. I hold the parents at cause on this across the country, Charlton, because none of the parents have said, what are you going to do about my son if he gets sick? What are you going to do to take care of his future? He comes out and performs for you and get COVID-19. So there's as much pressure on the coaches as there is on the parents when you look at this issue.
Yeah.
Because these parents are sitting back, and they're going to sign this agreement along with their son, who is going to this university to play. Hopefully that they'll have a future in professional ball. But right now, nobody's caring about the health of the young athletes.
Well, somebody's caring. It's the medical doctors and the scientists that has told us to social distance. I even went to my own doctor for a physical just about, less than a month ago, and we had a conversation. He said, why are people trying to go back and play sports when COVID-19 is killing people? And I said, I don't know the answer to that, but I wouldn't do it. He said, neither would I. So, but I want to go back to that story at Oklahoma State. And oftentimes people will say, well, we need the coaches to speak out, and we need the owners to speak out and talk about equality, Big C. And I told that story about one of our old partners when we started Big C Sports. He was calling us the N-word. He didn't say it to our face, but he tweeted it or texted to a couple of people how he hates working with N-words, and those N-words are always trying to think they know everything, and those N-words are this. And I'm thinking, how did a white guy like that get a job in media? But it did. So when we ask for sometime our white brethren to speak out against racism, they don't want to speak up because maybe they believe in the garbage that's being hated on, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, for people to sit around and all of a sudden say that they're having a salient moment now that, systemic racism does not exist in America or doesn't exist, they've been a part of the systemic racism, Charlton, ever since they've been in their job. They understand the reason why they have their job. They understand the reason why minorities don't get those jobs. Just like in the coaching position, everyone understands that, Charlton. For them to come out and they're constantly asking the question, regardless of the sports show you see, do you think there's systemic racism? Why are they asking people, do they think that? When they're sitting there and they're actually a part of the aiding and abetting in it, Charlton, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But they want to play dumb. Wow, I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
It's like, what neighborhood do you live in? Do you see law officers in your neighborhood patrolling around? Do you see them pulling over people? Do you see them taking people out of the car? And in this incident, Charlton, that just happened in Atlanta with Rashid Davis, when he got out of the car, he cooperated with the police in every capacity. He was very kind and cordial throughout the ordeal, Charlton. And you could see that this officer had intent to shoot him because he had changed hands with the taser to the gun prior to he even firing off the taser back at him.
Yeah.
But the police department has said that the taser is not a lethal weapon. So why did you kill the man?
Yeah, I even heard, I mean, everybody has their own thoughts. I still say to anybody, if you ever detained by laws, just comply and don't let it get to that point. But shooting a guy when he's running away doesn't make any sense. But we've seen that happen before.
You had his card, you had his ID. You could have picked him up any place.
Yeah.
But for the officers.
And we're having, again, a hard time hearing you, Big C. I know we're going to try to work on our phone line. What we're going to do right now is take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, we're going to try to get Big C's phone line cleared up, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. Anywhere in the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away when the weather is clear. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. And I really appreciate the way things are growing. So, Big C, I know we're dealing with the weather, but I still appreciate what the mayors, 4 African-American mayors, were having a conversation. And the reason I was saying, oh my goodness, we were just saying about 2 weeks ago, we need to hear from more black women about how to solve these problems when it comes to race. From Harriet Tubman to Michelle Obama, they've seen the worst and the best America has to offer. But for the most part, when black women are on TV, they're not really pushing the sports angle. They're talking about civic leaders and responsibility, and to have African-American mayors in the charge of major cities, they're dealing with solutions that can help everybody. Big C, your thoughts? And I know we're having a hard time with Big C's mic, so what we're going to do is I just want to go forward. If you can hear Big C, go ahead and chime in when you want to, and we got a few more minutes. But I just want to say to those mayors who are talking about solutions, I really appreciate it because we need to hear that. I also know when you deals with Gundy at Oklahoma State, obviously the man, he feels the way he feels. And we might want him to have a different solution, Big C, but sometimes people aren't going to have a different solution. They're going to say what's in their heart, and not only in their heart, he wore it on his chest, Big C. Your thoughts? And it looks like we're having a hard time with Big C's mic, so we're gonna just go forward and just make sure that we have every understanding that what's going on in this world today is about dialogue. It's going to take dialogue for people to change things. I hope that we can have enough dialogue to create police reform. I know Keisha Lance Bottoms, mayor of Atlanta, had talked about doing that, and it's even at the highest point of society. I understand people's thoughts that maybe he should not have run. I know he should not have run, but you shouldn't get shot for running away. Dylan Booth, he assassinated 9 black Americans in a church praying. When law enforcement showed up, they didn't shoot him. They took him to a hamburger place, gave him something to eat, and then took him to jail. I mean, people can Google that. Anyone that says, yeah, but he shouldn't have run from the police. Dylan Booth murdered, shot 9 black Americans in a church, killed them. And when law enforcement got there, they took him to a hamburger place, and then took him to jail. Okay? So for people that say there's not something sinister going on, then justify that. They should have taken the gentleman from Atlanta to get a hamburger, and then if they had to book him, they go book him. But we know a lot of times people want to just get you in the system. But I still say don't run because you know what's going on. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, she wants 11 Confederate statues removed. The South lost the Civil War. Some Americans want to honor the treasonous Southern Confederate at the time who fought against the United States of America, and they don't appreciate their flags being taken down. So I appreciate Nancy Pelosi, what she's trying to do, even though she loves sports too. But think about it. When people are saying, even with NASCAR, I can't believe they're trying to take away our flag and I'm never going to go to another NASCAR event. There are people who are saying those things. And you think about it, as it turns out, 9 of 11 statues were for Confederate members. And that was antithetical to America. And so everybody has their feelings about the flag or statues being taken down. I've heard a lot of heated debate about that. But I would just ask you, if you fought against America, why are we holding a statue of you in the United States? And think about it. Of the 9 of 11 statues Pelosi wants to remove, Democrats Jefferson Davis, Wade Hampton, John E. Kenna, Uriah Milton Rose, Alexander Hamilton Stevens, James Zacharias George, Zebulon Byrd Vance, Joseph Wheeler, Edward Douglas White, Robert E. Lee, a commander in the Confederate Army, Edmund Kirby Smith, another Confederate general removed from the Capitol. Neither men had stated a political party affiliation at that time. But there's some people that did not mean to do the best by America, and we just want to go forward to form a more perfect union, and I appreciate it. Now, did anyone notice that POTUS was actually given a commencement speech for the military? Even though he got 5 deferments, he shows up at West Point and tries to give a commencement speech. And there's a lot of questions about the health of POTUS. Was he drunk or was he sick? When he was walking down the rail, it's as if he would have failed the sobriety test himself. He was going down the steps, and then later when he tried to have a glass of water, he tried to hold the water with his right hand, you know, the same one he used in the Bible when he had that stunt of attacking American protesters. He tried to use that hand, and he couldn't do it, so he had to bring up his left hand to hold the glass. And I hope that, I mean, to me, whatever he is. He has medical doctors. But he said the ramp that he descended on after West Point's commencement speech was a very long and steep, kind of like some of the truths that he's told, right? Long and steep, had no handrail, and most importantly, it was very slippery. And the last thing he was going to do is fall for the fake news to have fun with. And the final 10 feet ran down to the ground level. And I guess, what was his excuse when he couldn't lift a glass of water with one hand? Was that because the cup was slippery? It's all fair in love and war. Hopefully he'll get some help with that. I mean, that's his choice. He always says everything's fine with him anyway. I want to look at some things that are happening in the world of sports. And as I always tell Big C, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. Nothing's perfect, but that's important that you look at the preamble to the Constitution, and we all got to work hard to make things better. Everybody deserves liberty and justice for all. Nobody should have to deal with a lot of the pain that a lot of people of color have to deal with. But now everybody's talking about it, and some people don't want to hear it. And that's okay, too. We all have freedom of speech. I want to just mention, in the world of the NFL, there was a birthday party that Dak Prescott held, I guess, a couple of months ago after the COVID-19 had become an issue. Well, the Dallas Cowboys and Houston Texans have some players that have tested positive for COVID-19. A small number of Dallas Cowboys players tested positive for COVID-19, according to multiple sources. Also, a few players from the Houston Texans. And ironically, Pro Bowl running back Ezekiel Elliott tested positive, but says he's feeling good. I think for people thinking it's okay to go back and play sports, you have world-class athletes that are probably in the best health and shape of their lives, or in the best shape of a lot of people, and they can even contract the virus. I think, on the other hand, of the athletes who come down with COVID-19, they're all recovering. That's light at the end of the tunnel. And if they can recover from it, then to me, that's something that can be studied. Like, why are they recovering? How do they get sick and then recover? That means there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And I know everybody from sports to entertainment, they want to get back, at least they say they want to get back to the playing surface and start playing and tackling and blocking each other. We just talked earlier about how Ohio State University, they want players to sign a waiver if they're going to come back and play football or even report to practice at Ohio State. They're talking about signing a waiver to get that to happen. And I don't know. If you look at the Centers for Disease Control, they have local and NFL guidelines to keep facilities safe, limiting employee access. Now, the NFL, they have allowed players who needed rehab from injuries and surgeries to be at a team facility throughout the season. They've allowed them to do that throughout the offseason. But if players are coming down with the virus and they're not even having contact, what does that tell you about the general population? And so everybody has to keep that in mind too. I don't want to have players, get injured, but no one's forcing them to go in there, and it's up to them, especially when it comes to the college level. The players got to put their heads together for that. New Orleans Saints Malcolm Jenkins joined CNN on discussions about social justice. It's a lot like what Big C Sports is doing, and as I mentioned in the show, starting out, the way our show came together, there was a lot of racial enmity said toward me and Big C by one of our white co-hosts. He didn't say it on the air, but he said it to some people. He even sent it in a text about them uppity Negroes, and he hates, African Americans, and it's amazing. We even had a black female co-host on the program, but he had such negative things to say about people of color. He's off the air now. I'm still going strong, Big C and I, but things are real. That's why I say I've been around some of my white American friends that I really like that guy. He's a good guy, I thought, from what he showed me. But things he was saying about black people, he didn't say it to me. He said it to some other white people. Okay? And it got back to me in a text and some conversations. So when I'm hearing people that might listen to what I say or Big C say, oh, you talk too much about politics. If we didn't tell you, you'd never hear this stuff. There's a lot of people, there's good people and bad, but I'm asking for my good white brethren to shout out that racial enmity when you see it. And it came to me from a white person, what was said. Someone who was decent that shouted it out. I know a lot of people grow up in a household where their parents might have some bigotry in them, or their uncle or their aunt, or they have a sister or a niece or whatever it is. And sometimes they say nothing because they tacitly consent. So I appreciate good people with character. And Malcolm Jenkins is going to be doing some work with CNN. I appreciate anything that people have to offer to making this world a better place for everybody, whether it's United States, whether it's Australia, Zimbabwe, New Zealand, whether it's believe it or not, Hong Kong. When you think about it, we have people all over this planet. Germany, soccer players in Germany were in Black Lives Matter, and Jenkins played in the NFL for 11 years. So I appreciate that. Even Roger Goodell came out and said some things about Colin Kaepernick. People were lambasting him, saying that he didn't say enough about Colin's name when he said we need to listen more. He did come out and say he believes Colin should be able to play in the NFL. I know they had an agreement, so I don't know what that agreement had in it, but it's just about a team giving him a chance. There's been some talk about Pete Carroll up in Seattle. Everybody can say what they want to say. The man is good enough to play. He had 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions when he last had the chance to start for the 49ers, and they had a bad team then. But everybody has a chance to redeem themselves if given a chance. NBA star Kevin Durant joins Major League Soccer Group, has 5% interest in a franchise in Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Union has a 5% ownership stake in that. So that's athletes doing something outside of the sport that he's in, but just trying to go forward and do more business, as a lot of people are doing when they're able to do that. United States gymnasts. Think about this. I don't like these stories, but we gotta mention it. Just like racism, if we sit back and say nothing and tacitly consent to it, then it happens. USA Gymnastics, some 140 female athletes, including star Simone Biles, seeks a $215 million lawsuit versus Team USA. You know, USA, gymnastics. They're standing for the flag did not prevent over 140 women from being sexually assaulted, alleged in a lawsuit. That's important. For the first time in a public court filing, Simone Biles, America's most decorated gymnast and Team USA's best hope for gold at the next summer Tokyo Olympics, has identified herself as a plaintiff in the ongoing civil case involving USA Gymnastics and the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. I'm just saying, we always say on our program, there's no excuse for racism or domestic violence. And when you have the U.S., my goodness, people talk about the flag and how black men and white men, the ones that do, are Megan Rapinoe, the U.S. soccer team, when they take a knee, is to bring attention to inequalities. They're asking for everybody to help fix it. Don't turn a blind eye. 140 women for the United States Olympic gymnastics team sexually assaulted. I'm sure they stood for the flag, but that didn't help them. We can't hide behind the flag and say that everything is perfect. The gentleman, I won't even call him a gentleman, there was a man at NASCAR said that they can't fly the Southern Confederate flag. He's not going to race in NASCAR at the end of the year. I hope he quits now. Standing for the flag did not protect those young women. The motion filed in court, there's a lot of painful things to read about it, but attorneys representing the sports governing body, USA Gymnastics, proposed $215 million settlement offer in the federal case, bankruptcy case. That offer is since rejected by think about it, 140 survivors, by Mr. Nassar, if you want to call him Mr., that assaulted women, allegedly. They'll have their day in court, depending on what happens. I don't know. But the intent to shield the survivors in court and public from the truth regarding the USOPC knew about the sexual abuse of its athletes. They knew about it, just like people knew about racism. Just like my old white partner when we started Big C Sports in 2015. I didn't know he was a bigot. He hid it very well. He was calling me brother, and God bless you, brother, and you're a good man, brother. But around his group of white friends, he was, you in this and the N-word, that, just a lot of negative things. I just want to make sure we do our part to help everybody form a more perfect union. Having a lot of weather issues with our show today. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence or racism. If you know anybody going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911 and get them some help. As we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.